Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the MindShare Podcast. So, how many times over the last couple of weeks have you heard this? The listing is just sitting. 30, 45, maybe even pushing 60 days. And almost like right away, the conversation always turns into, yeah, we probably need to drop the price. And I actually had this exact conversation the other day with an agent. We were talking through a listing, and she says, I was like, what's going on out there? How's things? She's like, I got to reduce the price on a listing. I asked her, I said, why? And she paused. And then she said to me, well, it's been on the market 45 days or something. I said, okay. And she goes, it's probably priced high. We knew it. And I just kind of sat there for a second. Because that answer right there, that was a problem. It's got nothing to do with the listing and nothing to do with the market. It was about the approach we took to the entire listing to begin with. I'm David Greenspan, and this is episode number 380. Look, listings are sitting. Okay. But what does sitting even actually mean? And compared to what? What are we actually measuring that against? See, if we're going back to the past few years where things were selling again 30, 60, 90 seconds, and I know the past couple of years it hasn't been like that, but just a few years before that it was like that. And if that's the reference point, where things were just moving that quickly, we'd have houses selling again, in the same day with, 10 competing offers for way over asking. None of that was normal. We all know that. If you go back, not even 5 years, I'm talking go back further. Go back 15 years, 20 years, 30, 40 years. Average days on market has typically sat somewhere between the 30, 60, 90 day range. Slower markets, we're starting to push that 90. Right? So if you say average, you're in that 30 to 60. But again, as it's slower, 60 to 90. But that's why we call it a market. So when somebody's saying to us that it's been sitting, 45 days, it's sitting. I don't know. Maybe it's, the market's just doing what real estate has always done over the years. And you got to go back, literally, over the past century of real estate, which a lot of people might sit back and say that's way too long. Fine. Go back 50 years. Go back 45 years. Go back 30 years. You want to go back 20? Regardless, the numbers still tell us a very similar story. Houses don't normally sell in 30, 60, 90 seconds. They don't normally sell in 14 days. We've seen it happen, yes. But again, the average, what's normal? What should expectations be? They should be that things take time. They should be that people, when they're shopping for real estate, they got to think about it. They got to figure out their financing. And especially in a market like right now, where financing is not the easiest thing to get, especially based on, overall expenses, overhead, and everything else in life. The real issue here is that most people, most agents don't actually know what they're reacting to. Right? It feels long. It feels like it's sitting too much. It's this uncomfortable feeling. I don't know what to say to people. The seller starts asking questions like, why aren't we getting the showings? Or if we're getting the showings, why aren't we moving? Why is nobody placing an offer? And then people start second guessing themselves. Did I do it right? Did I price it right? Did I market it right? Maybe it goes deeper than that. They look in the mirror and ask themselves, am I doing a good job? Why is mine not selling, but somebody else's is? And that pressure right there that's being put on by your client, by yourself, by the mirror, we're now making decisions based on the pressure. We're not making decisions based on what's actually right. What should we be doing in this moment? What is the strategic play versus the emotional play? And we're doing it based on pressure versus stats and information and knowledge and experience. That's where we start to really dictate a market. That's where we start to dictate what our clients are actually going to get for their home, what the house down the street now is going to be able to sell for. Everything starts to change because the decisions we make based on the pressure that we feel, not necessarily the strategic pressure, but the emotional pressure. And again, that's where things can totally go sideways. A listing being on the market for, a few weeks, even 30 days, 40 days, technically, it's not sitting. It's doing something. You just haven't figured out exactly what that something is yet. I mean, you could argue like, hey, of course it's there. And it's like, it's up for sale. It's giving people an opportunity to come in and see it. But let's go deeper. Okay, before you even think about touching the price, because that's typically when things are sitting, longer than people want them to, people start thinking, I've got to reduce the price. Well, I already alluded to that just a moment ago, that when you reduce the price on the property because of the fact that it's sitting, maybe you were priced too high. Maybe you do need to bring the price down. But we've also got to think to ourselves, again, the overall impact that's having when we make that decision. And again, I'm going to come back to it. I know I just said it a moment ago, but as we continue to drop prices on listings, we're continuing to drop the price on the market. It doesn't just have to sell. In some cases it does. In some cases it does, but you've got to figure that out. Right? So that's where we've got to slow the whole thing down first. And first thing we got to do is ask ourselves, where are we actually positioned in the market? Not where do you think you're at? Not, but like, where are you actually sitting in comparison to other active listings out there? And think about that right now. Like, if you've got a listing sitting at this moment and you're thinking, hey, we're not getting the traction or it's not moving as fast as I want it to, think about that. Active listings out there in the market. Are you priced higher? Are you priced lower? Are you on par? What about anything that's recently sold? How does that compare? Again, higher, on par, lower. Are there any expireds out there? What did they do? What happened to those ones and why did they expire? See, we're continuously trying to figure out, are we above? Are we in line? Are we chasing a number that doesn't exist anymore? A lot of listings right now, there's a lot of folks that have overpriced them on purpose, and then there's a lot that are not overpriced when I'd say, like, quote-unquote, on purpose. They're just overpriced because the agent probably hasn't done enough research and because the seller decided, hey, that's the money that I want to get for it. But again, this is where we come in. The seller needs to recognize they are not working in a real estate market that was a few years back. They can't price their homes based on yesterday. You can't price their homes based on yesterday. That market is gone. We've got to explain that to them. That is the first line of defense right there. When you walk in and you decide, I'm going to set the price, let's figure out how are we setting it? Based on what? And look, you've been in this industry as long as you have been, whether that's a long time or a very short time. I'm sure you understand the process of actually going out and pricing a listing. What should this house be listed at? And we know it. Go do the research. Figure out the past solds. Figure out the active listings. Come up with a number that is in line with where the market is at. Do your CMA. Now, if you haven't been into the home yet and you haven't really taken the tour to see if the floors are painted in gold, take a tour, walk in there with the range, get a sense of what that range of that property is supposed to be, sit down with them or go on the tour with them as you walk in once you sort of, through the process of your listing presentation. And then from there, you can ask them, what are you hoping to get for your property? Now, this has been argued, and I know that when we had Fotini, the negotiation expert, on the show a few weeks back, and then I had her at the mastermind back, in the fall of 2025, she had said you walk in with a number and you anchor yourself and you say, this is the number. On one hand, I can understand her positioning and her tactics. On the other hand, it could push the seller to say, you know what, you're not the person for me. Your price is way too low. I'm going to hire somebody else. They said they could do it for more. And that's a common problem that we're getting all the time is like, well, the other agent said. And you're sitting there thinking, but it ain't worth that. Well, that's where the whole idea of what you're working on right there, that's where you come in. It's helping the seller understand what is reality today. Now, when you can figure out what their motive is for why they want to sell, and you can figure out what their timelines are for when they need to sell, you could determine how fast is this thing actually going to happen or not. How fast, does it need to happen or not? Because if you realize it's like, we're just thinking about it. There's no rush. Well, at that point there, when it comes to, again, pricing, maybe you can be, I don't want to say higher, but maybe you can be a little bit on the high end. They're not rushing. And if you do land on the number, they're happy. Versus somebody else who's like, hey, I've got to get out of here in 60 days, like come hell or high water. One, I can't afford it, and two, we got a new job. Like, we have to move. Well, all of a sudden, we got motive, we got timelines, we got to bust ass. And that's where pricing has to change. We can't go on the high end because we all know that if we go on the high end, people are not coming through there. They're not making the offers. So the pricing strategy is on you. They want it from an emotional perspective. They want it because that's what they heard their friend or neighbor down the street got. Because, they saw those numbers a few years ago and went, oh my God, this is amazing. That's why they want that number. I mean, who doesn't want more money? But we got to come into this thing, we got to slow it down, and we got to ask ourselves, what is the right positioning for this property? And some of the bend either way is going to be based on motive and timelines. So again, if you do have a listing right now that is sitting, I'm going to ask you, have you determined what their motive is? Do you know what their timelines are? And when you look at the number that you put on that property, or you did together you put on that property, how does it compare to what's going on out there? These are the first things we need to look at. Then we go to marketing. Of course, I got to bring up marketing. And I don't mean like, we put it on the MLS, we did some social media. No. That doesn't do what we need to do. We're not talking about just like that's not marketing. That's just what we call like uploading. The question is, did you actually create exposure? Have you actually built MindShare for this property? Not just put the sign in the lawn either. That's not enough. That's the simplest part of it. That's the automated part of it. It's what are you going to do to be different now? And in fact, somebody asked me this on a momentum training the other day. And she said, all these people are doing a lot of the same stuff. How do we stand out? How do we be different? How do we take our service to another level? We were, in fact, the whole session was about branding. And the conversation really centered around, like, I get it, but so many people do the same thing. Like, how do we go different? How do we raise the level of that experience? Well, this is where you raise the level of your experience, your output, your delivery. You don't just put a sign on the lawn, put the property up on MLS, and put a social media post on your Instagram for a minute and go, I marketed it. That's not marketing. See, how about creating a flyer or a postcard for everybody in the immediate streets around the property? Then personally going to hand it to them so you could double down and introduce yourself. That's extra work. Did you do that? What about, have you spoken about it at your office meetings? Have you told everybody in the office, this is the listing that I've got? Have you continued to tell them about it? Have you looked into whether or not you've got any contacts within that immediate neighborhood that you could call to see if they know anybody want to make a move closer? Did you go through each of the 7 ways to communicate to make sure you're using a cross-channel approach and building as much mindshare as possible? Now, if you don't know what the 7 ways to communicate are, I've got a resource for you. Go to my website, mindshare101.com. It's right there. It's free. It's right on the homepage. It's called the Ultimate Marketing Bundle. This is 31 pages of marketing information that you need to be leveraging. There's a content calendar in there for you as well. Again, it's called the Ultimate Marketing Bundle. It's right there on the homepage at mindshare101.com. Totally free. Go download it. See, when you think about the 7 ways and you ask yourself, did I do all 7? Well, I'll tell you, if you post it on social, that's one of them. But the question now is, did you just put up one post? What are you doing to leverage your Instagram, maybe on a more frequent basis, to continue to post that? But what about, even more importantly, stories on Instagram? The behind-the-scenes kind of stuff. The stuff that you could put up. It doesn't have to be polished, no virtual tour, no photographer, just you and your phone. Go record a video, throw some tunes behind it, put it up. Put a little CTA. Hey, if you want to see more about this property, get in touch with me. That's something you could do consistently. Again, like I mentioned, going around to the neighborhood. Specifically, like very, very, like it's got to happen. The 5 doors next door and the 5 doors on the other side and the 10 doors across the street. Go introduce yourself. Hey, how are you? That property right there. Yeah, you see the sold sign or for sale sign. Yeah, that's me. Oh, okay. What can I help you with? Well, we just wanted to come by today, introduce myself, let you know that I do have the listing. We're going to be hosting some open houses. There might be a little bit of extra traffic on the street. You might have some questions about anything, or if there are any concerns, I just want you to know that I'm the one with the listing. I thought I'd introduce myself so you know who to come to. And please, if you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask me. In fact, can I answer any questions about that property right now? Hey, do you happen to know anybody that might want to move into the neighborhood? Great, here's my card. My name is David. Nice to meet you. Again, thank you so much. Sort of bother you at your door today. I just wanted to make sure that you knew I'm there. If you need anything, I'll be there. That's door knocking. That's going around and actually introducing yourself to people. And like, why wouldn't you? The sign is right there. Go talk to them. But what you're also doing is you're exploring, do they know anybody that may want to move into the neighborhood? Again, like I said, talking to your office about it. Who in your office might know somebody? When you think about making phone calls, when you're doing your calls, are you cold calling the neighborhood and letting them know that you've got the property listed? Have you reached out to people in your database and let them know that it's there? Have you sent it out in emails and marketed it that way? Is there a landing page for it on your website? Is there anywhere on your website that I could see it? See, when I think about marketing, marketing isn't just posting something on Insta like I started off the top. This goes way deeper into, again, leveraging all 7 ways to communicate to understand. For group 1, how can I go from the macros to the micros? From group 2, how can I go macro to micro? What can I do to build enough mindshare about this property that, well, everybody knows about it? See, if we price it right and we market it right, it should sell fairly quickly. Now, again, we can't control the market. But these are things that I'm going to look at as I think to myself, the listing is sitting. Well, why is it sitting? So far, we've talked about pricing. We've now talked about marketing. Then the third thing here, feedback. This is the one that gets ignored all the time. Like, what are buyers actually saying? Not that one random comment, right? But like, what's the pattern? What are we hearing? The price feels high. The house needs work. It smells like dog or cigarettes. Not what we expected, like at that price. What are you hearing? Because if you continue to hear the same thing over and over again, like, that's not somebody's opinion. That's the market talking to you right there. It's telling you what's going on. It's telling you what needs to be fixed. But the flip side to that is, if you're not hearing anything at all, that right there is an opportunity to review your process when it comes to showings on your listing. And I get it. I hear it often from people. They don't give feedback. Nobody tells you anything. Some people actually told me, strategically speaking, they don't want to give anything away for their buyers. I'm thinking, what are we talking about here? Guys, we are in an industry where our job is to help people buy and sell real estate. Both of us, both the buy side and the sell side, and your jobs are to come together and figure out how to get a deal done, to satisfy both the buyer and both the seller, to meet somewhere that everybody's going to go, yes, let's move forward. What are we talking about that we're not talking to people? We're not giving people feedback. And if you're not getting feedback on your listings, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to ask you, are you giving feedback on other people's listings? See, if you're not, how can you expect other people to do it for you? And they may not know, like the people that came through your listing, may not know that you leave feedback for other people. But there's something to be said about when you start to do good, good should come back to you. We're not going to expect it. We're not going to think the world is full of, sunshines and lollipops all the time. This is going to be something that may not always work in your benefit when you do leave the feedback and then somebody else doesn't leave it for you. But I'm confident that the more you do leave feedback for other people, the more feedback you will start to get on your listings. And that information is crucial. It tells you what's going on. It tells your seller what's going on. It paints a real picture around expectation of what we should expect and whether or not this listing is just sitting. Again, did we price it right? Did we market it right? Is there something in the house that we haven't seen that needs to be addressed so that somebody will actually make an offer on this thing? Look, again, I know getting feedback isn't the easiest thing these days, but we need to change that. And it starts with you. It starts with you actually leaving feedback for somebody else. Now, going further, though, when it comes to your specific listing, and I said to you again about the process when it comes to showings on your listing, what is your process? I mean, when you go online and everybody's using the online sign-ins and getting the codes for lockbox and all that other stuff, and technically there's a sign-in. You know who the agent is. You know exactly what the contact info is. And I know you're thinking, I call, I follow up, but they don't answer. Well, what else can we do to improve it? What can we do to build a relationship with that individual that when we see that they've got that showing booked for our listing, that instead of just looking at it on the app and going, yeah, we got another showing, what if we reached out? Hey, Judy, David, ABC Realty. I saw that you've booked a showing for my property this evening at 7 p.m. At 123 Inver Street. Oh, yeah, I have. How can I help you? Well, I just wanted to call, introduce myself, say hello. Appreciate you booking the showing. Looking forward to hearing your feedback. I was wondering that, I'm not sure what your evening is like tonight, and I imagine you've got a few properties you might be looking at, but I'd love to get on the phone very quickly for maybe 2 minutes after you've seen the property, whether it's immediately after or later on this evening or maybe tomorrow morning. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's a tricky market out there, and I think that if we can work together, not whether your buyers like it or not, but if we can work together, all of us in the industry, it'll help us all do a lot more business maybe a little bit quicker. What do you think? Could we make a connection later on? Something like that. What did I do, though? What was the piece right there? Building relationship. I saw the name come through, and instead of just saying, oh, okay, I actually picked up the phone and I connected with the individual. Yeah, but they never pick up. Good, send them a text. See if they respond to you. Maybe you get to a point where you think, you know what? If that person does not respond to my text and does not pick up my call, maybe I'll tell them we're not going to let them in. Maybe that will spark them to turn around and go, whoa, hold on a second here. What do you mean I can't go in and see the property? Why? Well, you weren't responsive. We asked you a question, you didn't get back to us. We weren't sure if it was bogus or not, and we thought, you know what, we're gonna stop it. Actually, what I really wanted to do is I wanted to cause you to actually call me so we could talk. Oh, well, I don't like the way you do business. Well, I don't like the way you do business. No, I'm not suggesting you get combative with anybody. What I am suggesting to you is that we build rapport, we build relationship, we try to make a connection with somebody, we try to create some sort of moment where we're actually going to come together and collaborate with one another. This way you can get the feedback that you want. Because when you've got that feedback, you can turn around and understand better what is going on with that listing and what changes may or may not need to be made. On top of the fact that when your seller is pressuring you and asking questions, you actually have answers. So what does your communication usually look like? Do you have a strategy for follow-up? Do you try to maximize the feedback that you get? Or do you just maybe place one phone call or send one text or look at the app and there was nothing there, so you kind of assume, whatever. I'm going to continue to pressure this one. We've got to be collaborative. We've got to work together in this industry to push the envelope, to come together and try to get a deal done. The only way that happens is through communication. And I mean, communication is something that is sorely lacking in today's world. Everybody hiding behind a keyboard, thinking they could just text or just ignore because of whatever. But that's not collaboration. That doesn't make deals happen. At least not quickly. So, when do you actually reduce the price? And this is where oftentimes everybody gets it wrong. Because right now, what's happening, we're seeing people reducing price strictly based on time. But time in this case, it's actually irrelevant on its own. You reduce because of evidence, not because of time. Like if you're getting no showings, nothing. I mean, I wouldn't even say that's a pricing problem necessarily. That could just simply be that it hasn't been marketed properly. Could be a pricing problem, but again, let's go back through the marketing. Are we getting the right exposure? Do people know that it's there? Or how about if you are getting the showings, but you're not getting the offers? Again, we've got something to look at deeper there. What is it? What is the feedback saying? What is the market saying? How long has it been on? Have we done a review? Have we looked back at the numbers over the past 14 days just to see if anything's drastically changed? If you're getting consistent feedback, we've now got direction. But just saying like, hey, it's been 45 days. Again, not a strategy. You're simply just working against emotional pressure. You're working against that pressure from yourself and from your sellers. And that, again, is not the strategy to necessarily bring the price down. That's just an uncomfortable feeling. But when we know what our pricing is supposed to be and we know that we market it properly and we know that we've done everything we can to seek feedback, now we can make a strategic decision on whether or not that price needs to come down. Because I come back to the point that if you're going to bring the price down, why was the price that to begin with anyways? How long has it been like that? What has drastically changed over the past 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks? Maybe it's 6 weeks. What has drastically changed in the market that all of a sudden the price just needs to drop? Every time I pose this question right now to you, like everything that keeps going through my head is like, did you do what you were supposed to do? Have you marketed? Have you spoken to people? Have you gotten maximum exposure? Like, have you done all of that? When you see products in a store, yes, a lot of these stores will put sales on, 100%. But oftentimes, they don't start with like, we're just going to put the cheapest price out there and hope people buy to drive more, exposure. They think about their marketing, their promotion. How are they getting the word out there? What are they doing to show people that, like, this is what you need? This is the answer to what you're looking for. The conversation that most people don't want to have, and this is really what it comes down to, it's actually not even just a pricing issue. It is overall conversation. Talking, strategizing, negotiating. Too many agents are avoiding it. They're like dancing around all this stuff, and then they try to soften the whole thing and hope that like there's just going to be some drastic change. But the longer we wait to have that strategic conversation, the longer we wait to have the hard conversation sometimes, and maybe that has to happen right at the listing presentation. When that seller thinks that their house is worth way more than it should be, that's the moment. Not to feel the fear of, but what if we lose it? Like they said they're going to go to somebody else because there's an agent that's going to do it for more. Or said they could sell it for more. That's the moment to have that conversation. You've got to look ahead and be real about it, right? Like, what kind of stress are you causing on yourself if you overprice that listing right off the get-go? We're going to try? Try. Where in this market right now is that going to work? That's the conversation that needs to be had right then and there. Because now it's not just about price. Now we could talk about how much time it's going to take. And remember, if we know their motive, we know their timelines, and they do have timelines. We can't afford to lose all that time. We know that there's carrying costs on the property. How long is that going to last? Lost time is just as important as lost money. They go hand in hand. Not to mention, when you get the property up there and it's overpriced and we're not getting the looks, what about the momentum? What about the frustration that it causes? So instead of just saying like, hey, we need to drop the price, which immediately will feel like failure to your seller, we got to reframe it. hey, something like, here's what the market's telling us. Or here's what we're seeing based on showings. And remember the based on, right? And that was something that Fotini brought up in negotiation tactics. Based on, what you're doing is you're providing evidence, you're providing substance when you use those words. Now you're saying, I'm not just giving you an opinion. Based on this, here's what we need to do, or here's what we've learned. And then you give a suggestion, or you give a direction. Here's what we have to do to adjust. In order to get you where you want to go, here's what I'm suggesting as next steps. And they've always got to understand why you're making that recommendation, right? So when you've got the substance, you've done the work, the homework, you've looked into it. Again, you've come back to them with reasoning. Now it's not emotional. There's nothing emotional about it. It's directional, it's tactical, and as I continue to say, it's strategic. Look, most of this always should have been handled right off the top. Like even before the listing went live, as I just mentioned, at the actual listing presentation. Setting the right expectations. Not being scared to have the conversation. Because that's where all of this, goes south. You walk in, you want the listing, you talk about price, we talk about the best case scenario. And then when it doesn't happen, we got to walk it all back. Now think about the way that impacts the trust that we've created. But wait a second, you told me this. Why now that? See, again, setting expectations, it's a hard conversation. Now, it's not actually hard to have, but it can feel hard because you're like, oh, I don't want to push them away. I don't want to scare them. I don't want to lose the opportunity. But it needs to be had. It shows your experience. It shows your professionalism. It shows that you're strategic. It shows that you know what you're doing. That's what I want when we talk about the biggest investment of my entire life, biggest asset of my entire life. And the minute trust is gone, the minute we've got a seed of doubt, now you're going downhill. So instead of just saying, hey, yeah, it could take some time, actually define it. And I know we can't say it's going to sell within 30 days or it's going to sell within 60 days, but instead of just putting like an open-ended timeline on it, let's start to talk about some of this. Explain to them it could be longer depending on how we position the whole thing. And again, this is where we anchor ourselves. Well, I don't want to use the word anchor because I used that as an example before. I want to anchor to price, but I want to anchor ourselves to strategy. How about that? Right? That conversation that we have up front, it changes everything after the fact. At the end of the day, we can't make people buy. We can't make people sell. We can't force the market to do anything. But we can always control the way we show up every single day. How we position ourselves, how we position the listing, how we communicate with other people. Communication is imperative. Don't hide behind the screen. Nothing happens hiding behind the screen. And if it does, it takes way too long. And there's no actual rapport and no trust built. But when you can create trust and rapport, you can have a conversation, you can actually get into a negotiation. So the way we communicate is imperative. How we guide people. Remember, we're there to help people. And right now, always, I guess, that's exactly what our role is. We shouldn't just be sitting there reacting to a market because that doesn't show your experience. You're in the same boat as your seller. When I say the word uneducated, I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it. You're the one who should have the experience. There's a reason they hired you. You should know more than they do. You should be able to give them better insights than they've got. This is not what they do every single day. But when you're just reacting to it, it shows me maybe you're not doing your homework. Maybe you weren't prepared enough. Maybe you don't know enough. Maybe you're the wrong person. I don't want to see you guessing. I don't want to see you chasing a market. I want to know that you understand what's happening. And I want to know that you're ready to have those conversations that most people will avoid having. All right, before we wrap up here, time for a quick commercial break. This episode of the MindShare Podcast is brought to you by Kits Keep in Touch Systems, your ultimate marketing and lead generation CRM. If you are in real estate, you need kits. And REM Real Estate Magazine, Canada's premier magazine for real estate professionals and industry stakeholders delivering news, insights, and commentary on the industry. While you're listening, head over to MindShare101.com and grab your free Ultimate Marketing Bundle. And if you are ready to grow your business with coaching, group training, or want to bring momentum into your office, reach out. All right, let's close this thing out. I want to leave you with this. Just because something isn't happening as fast as you want it to, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not working. But if you don't understand why it's not happening, that's what's going to lead you to make the wrong move. And right now, especially right now in this business, those wrong moves, they're costing time and they're costing money. And speaking of time, there's the one thing we don't get back. So slow down for a moment. Look at the data. Understand what's going on in the market. Have the conversation. And stop reacting emotionally to how things feel. Get out there and be strategic about it. I'm David Greenspan, reminding you to build MindShare because MindShare equals market share. As always, a big thanks to Kits and REM Magazine for sponsoring the MindShare Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next week.